Bueno, buenas tardes. Tengo el gusto de presentar a ustedes nuestro conferencista invitado, el señor Laurent Cordier. Laurent es ingeniero de telecomunicaciones con un posgrado en finanzas, actual director y gerente de alianzas globales, noticias y publicaciones de Google en Estados Unidos. Como tal, define e implementa las soluciones de Google para la industria de noticias y revistas, con más de 15 años de experiencia en el ámbito de la tecnología y los medios de comunicación. Se unió a Google hace 9 años ocupando diversos cargos dentro de la organización en Europa y en Estados Unidos. Antes de unirse a Google, lideró el segmento público. Por favor, recibamos a Laurent con un abrazo.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Encantado de estar aquí y le quiero decir mi agradecimiento al CIP por invitarnos. Entiendo que hay muchos representantes de compañías y de newspapers de Latinoamérica que han luchado años para la libertad de prensa. Y a Google valorizamos eso muchísimo. Es algo que hemos tenido en nuestros valores desde que Google fue fundido por Larry Page y Sergey Brin hace 20 años. Entonces, para mí es un honor de estar aquí con ustedes. Lo que voy a hacer es darle una presentación que ojalá le va a dar una overview de como Google partner con la industria en muchas áreas. Y como ven, ya mi español se acaba, entonces voy a switchar a inglés. Sorry for that. Maybe next year I'll manage to do it all in Spanish. So like I said, I think, when you think about it, Google and the news industry have, according to us, many common objectives. And for Google, the news industry is absolutely a top priority on the type of industry we want to partner with. There's a quote here from my CEO, Sundar Pichai. That's something he said immediately after he took the job at Google publicly. And as you can see, he said, Google cares deeply about journalism. Yes, because of the crucial role it plays in democratic society, ensuring the spread of knowledge and the free flow of information, but also because the value of our services like search is directly related to having a rich and sustainable knowledge ecosystem. And I think this is critical to understand. I get a lot of these questions from partners or clients telling me, at the end of the day, why do Google care about the news industry? Or how much do you really care? And you see here, the response to that. There's something about the values, and yes, it matters, but there's something as well which is more self-serve from a Google perspective. Is the search engine has value for users only if it has around it an ecosystem of rich and relevant information. And as a matter of fact, maybe you know that, but we deliver 10 billion of visits to the news site every month through our search, as well as 5 million of hours of news video are watched every day on YouTube. So we have a lot of things in common. And if you look at since the foundation of Google, we've been actively engaged with the news industry. Over the years, we've launched several products which are directly targeted to the news industry. You can see on this calendar that progressively we engage more and more in coalition or work with the industry. And that's a shift we did a couple of years ago. Like I said, we are still a teenager. Doodle is a 20-year-old company. So we are learning from our mistake, or we are learning as well from the feedback we are getting from partners. And many of these was, you guys need to engage better with the news industry so that you understand better our challenges, and that's what we've been trying to do in the last couple of months. So you see here a couple of initiatives we started, and I'm going to go through some of them in the next couple of minutes. And of course, the reason why the news industry is such a focus as well for Doodle, it's because more broadly, news industry is at a unique moment of its history. The way the way news is consumed, distributed, monetized, is changing dramatically. We see people consuming more and more of their news content from social media platforms. That's the case of 62% of adults in the US. In developing countries, the majority of adults are consuming news on chat apps. And I don't even want to mention what's happening with millennials. I have a daughter, and I can see how she's getting access to news content, and that's absolutely fascinating to see how this new generation is getting informed on very serious topics. And in parallel to that, we know that the business models are changing. And we do understand as well that there's a lot of challenges going on within the news industry or within the ecosystem of premium information. There's a filter bubbles and the spread of misinformation, unverified fake news. The revenue models where many publishers I'm talking to have still serious concern about how they're going to be able to maintain quality journalism and resources in their newsroom in a digital world where the economics are very different than what they used to be in print. And we see as well across the globe underserved areas in emerging countries, but even in very, very developed countries, like in the US, where there's been some concern about the access to local information across the states. So how are we thinking about our role? Doodle is still a software company. So the thing we have, I believe, is the capacity to develop product technologies and solutions that can help the transformation of the news publisher and support them in building a sustainable business model on digital. And the way we've been thinking about it when talking to our partners is around 4 areas. Storytelling. Technology is changing the way journalists can tell their story. So how do we explore new ways to report and tell stories? Audiences in digital, of course. So how do we support publisher efforts to reach and engage audiences wherever they are and at the right moment? Revenue. We have a very strong advertising business with publishers across the globe. How do we make it growing? And as well, how do we support diversification efforts from publishers? I'm going to talk about subscription, for example. And data, because we see, that data becomes an incredible asset for many industries, including the news industry. But the question is how to extract this data, and based on this data, deliver insight who can support customization of content, customization of user experience, or better revenue models. So let me go through each of those and give you a sense of what it is and what we do. So the first thing is about storytelling. In 2014, we created a team that we call the Doodle News Lab, originally in the US, but little by little spreading their influence across the globe. They are now present in Latin America since the beginning of 2017. And the focus of this team is to fuel innovation within newsrooms with an eye towards supporting the creation of quality journalism. And to do that, they have three means. One is training, the second is research, and the third is programs. So training is about training journalists on Google's tools or digital tools that can help them deliver new type of storytelling in digital. Research is more about conduct research in collaboration with trade association or other part of the ecosystem on trends in journalism and provide feedback either to the Google product team or to the industry in terms of what we see and what's going on. And programs are more customized one-shot initiative we do with news organization, non-profits, or technology companies to tackle either long-term ecosystem challenges or to look at how we can experience new way of innovative model in journalism. So this is News Lab, and I'm going to illustrate a bit more to make it more concrete. So for example, so far and since 2014, they have trained 250,000 journalists, that's a big number, conducted in-person training in 55 countries. So they do it through remote type of digital training or face-to-face training with newsrooms. They've as well, built at g.co/newslab 40 plus lessons in 19 languages, which are available to everybody. And in terms of special program, I did want to illustrate what kind of program it can be with what we did earlier this year in the last couple of months in Europe to combat fake news during the election coverage. So we partner with the First Draft Coalition and a variety of fact-checking and social media verification experts in newsroom. And the idea was to collaborate in order to identify as soon as possible fake news spreading across the social media ecosystem, debunk them based on fact check, and then retarget potentially population who had been exposed to this fake news in order to make them understanding that they might have been manipulated to say something. And in my country, especially in France, we partner with 37 newsrooms of the media industry in France. And that was pretty special because these newsrooms were not used to collaborate. Generally speaking, in the past, they had been competitors. So bringing them together was a kind of a very new experience. And they did debunk a couple of stories that had been that had been published during the election. One of the most famous one was about Macron, who, according to that, would have secret banking accounts in Caymans or this type of place, and they did manage to debunk it to show that the source that had been used in this fake news was not true, and then to retarget through Facebook, because Facebook was part of that as well, a user who had been exposed to this fake news idea. So now let me go to the second focus on my 4 topics, and this is about audiences and how we support publishers getting access to more audiences. The first thing is search. Search remains fundamental, of course, to Google, but as well, to many publishers, represented in many cases up to 35% of their traffic on digital. Search is 20 years old. We keep working on it, making it better, developing new UI so that your content will be much easily surfaced and or show up in search in more attractive ways. We keep working on our algorithm in terms of how the algorithm can make a better job at surfacing relevant content to users coming from authoritative sources. So this is a huge focus for our search team overall. Video is also important, even if, and I would love to get your feedback, but what I hear from many partners is that users still prefer text to video in many cases. Still, it's true that when users are engaged to a video, they are much more engaged than in anything else. Video monetized very well, generally speaking. And we see users increasingly turning to digital video for breaking news and coverage. So YouTube has been working on that, and I'll share with you a couple of things that the YouTube team is doing. And then the last piece, which is obvious to everybody, is mobile. 56% of users getting access to news information through mobile. It can even be more now, I believe. I think there's opportunities behind that because, generally speaking, it can be incremental in terms of news experience and news consumption from users, but it changed dramatically the way users are engaging with content. So let me start with mobile, in fact, because this is an area where we've been working a lot with partner and publisher. One of the things we find out a couple of months ago is the mobile web experience was absolutely terrible. In many cases, the time to load a page can be up to 19 seconds. That's the average. And this is a terrible user experience. And the fact with the user experience is once you have a terrible user experience, there are consequences. Users are not going back to mobile web. They are using more apps and walled gardens like social media. Or they would implement ad blocker, for example. So one of the things we did is to launch what we call the Accelerated Mobile Pages project with many partners. This is an open source project. And the fundamental philosophy behind AMP is to say, we are going to make mobile web a great user experience and respect the openness of the web in terms of the publisher is owning his content, is owning his business model. And at the end of the day, the AMP page is a publisher page. And we've seen dramatic engagement from the industry. There is already 4 billion of pages indexed. We have many platforms who have joined the initiative, like LinkedIn, Twitter, and Bing, and many publishers who are now publishing in AMP. And we are very excited about it. We think it can help the industry to create wonderful immersive experience on mobile web. Let me talk about video quickly. You see here a couple of illustrations of what's happening on YouTube. One of the things, so YouTube was not, if you think about the user experience on YouTube, generally speaking, it was not for live event. There was some live, let me rephrase that, but it was not well organized for fresh content. And what the YouTube team did a couple of months ago is to launch a breaking news window on YouTube when there's a big event so that fresh content from publisher can show up in our homepage. So you can see that on the right hand of the slide. The other thing we heard from many publishers is that video is expensive and not easy to make. So the YouTube team decided to give access to the YouTube player for news publisher for free, basically. So they give to news publisher their technology. The YouTube player is a very fast and beautiful player. We've started working with some publisher in Latin America. You can see here an example of TV Azteca, I believe, using the YouTube player for their own site, their own ONO. And finally, YouTube, of course, can be a platform for live events. So we see that, for elections or this type of events where there's an opportunity for publishers to get access to audiences via YouTube by making live coverage available through their YouTube channel. And I'll briefly talk through what we see as the next frontier in terms of user experience. It's voice. As you know, Google has been investing a lot in Google, the Assistant and Google Home. A year ago, we publicly released that 20% of our mobile searches in the US are voice activated. which is an incredible high number if you think about it. So we believe, voice-activated devices are going to continue to grow and are going to reconfigure the user experience and the relationship between publisher and user. This is still very early stage. There's a lot to define here in terms of, again, the experience, the monetization, how the ecosystem is going to redevelop, but we see it growing, and we see it as, again, something which is incremental to what users can do already with their devices on mobile. And finally, I'd like to say a word about fake news and the effort Google is doing to make sure we surface quality content. It is part of our mission. I think when we send a user to a link which is not an authoritative source and which is a kind of fake news or hate speech or misleading type of analysis, we are not doing our job as a search engine for our users. And we've seen that there's been a spread of this type of manipulation in digital in the last couple of years. To tell you the truth, what we see within Google is these queries in terms of volume are a very small percentage of our overall volume. They are less than 0.5%. But still, we think that they are much more important than just the traffic volume they represent, and we are working hard to fix it. There's no silver bullet. I think you guys are from the news industry, and you would certainly not want Google to become the arbiter of what is true or what is not true, to be some kind of censor on the internet of what is surfaced to user, and that's certainly not something we want to do. So we want to be very thoughtful and collaborative on how we approach this issue. That's why we launched back in April 2017 the fact check tag on Google News and search. So that's a label in search and news which highlights claims and verdicts from fact-checking articles to help readers understanding the reality or the veracity of the information they might be getting access to. In the same spirit, we announced back in April that we are making modification to our algorithm, again, to surface better authoritative sources and credible sources to our users. And as you can see on the right side of the slide, we are partnering with the industry to find solutions. The one I would like to highlight is the Trust Project from the Santa Clara University, which aims to define what would be the criteria of quality journalism in digital that can be used at scale for us to use them and then to better use them in our algorithm. So this, and then the last piece I would highlight, because I did forget it, is there was a lot of controversy a couple of months ago about fake news and how fake news organizations were making money out of digital advertising, and we've announced changes in policies a couple of months ago. We changed to remove the economic incentive for fake news, allowing us to take action on sites misrepresenting themselves. So as you can see, we operate in many different areas. Again, there's no silver bullet. We work on search. We work with the ecosystem to define how we can get better criteria for trustworthiness information. And we modify and make our policies evolving to fight against fake news. All right, I hope you're still with me, because I realize I have a lot of content to cover. I do want to talk about monetization and business model. As you certainly know, we own DoubleClick, and DoubleClick is is a great partner, I believe, for publishers, for them to monetize their audience. The majority or a large proportion of large publishers are using what we call DFP, which is DoubleClick for publisher. It's a platform to manage and monetize your inventory. And we keep investing in DFP so that DFP will give you the best opportunity to monetize your audience. We have invested a lot in programmatic. Part of it is because programmatic is delivering such a great value proposition for advertisers that we think publishers have to adapt to that and think through how do they make their inventory available through programmatic channels. Programmatic doesn't mean cheap. It just means a more efficient and effective way to sell and buy media inventory in digital. And we've started seeing in the US at least that programmatic can represent 20, 30, 40% of digital advertising revenue from publisher and growing at double-digit levels. And of course, what came a bit as something newer, I would say, is the opportunity to develop a subscription business for publisher. And there is optimistic signs here. There's a study by Reuters which show that depending on the country, the percentage of people who read news who might pay for it in the next 12 months range from 26 to 37%. So that's a high percentage of users who declare themselves as willing to pay for high-quality journalism. And we understand that, and we heard that loud and clear from many publishers, that advertising might not be enough for them to develop a sustainable business model. So we did make some effort to understand where we can help on subscription. And we announced back in October, so a couple of weeks ago, Google plans for subscription. And they are in threefold. One is how do we make paywall content more discoverable through the web? The second is how do we help publishers target users with a higher propensity to subscribe? And the last one is how can we help reducing the conversion friction in the buying process for a defined user? So on the first one, you might have heard, we changed our policy, which was called First Click Free. Who is familiar with First Click Free? Okay, pretty much anybody. So maybe it's, so the point here is to say, in the past, to be ranked properly by Google search, you had to allow a user to have access to at least 3 articles per day when they come from Google search. And many publishers came back to us and said, listen, it's 3 articles per day is too much. We cannot have a sustainable paywall model if users can get access to as many articles as 3. And the other thing they say is we need more flexibility. Because maybe during a certain period, like when there's a Brexit, we want to make all our articles free for 48 hours. But on certain period, we want to bring back our articles behind a paywall. So I think that at the end of the day, what it was is, as a publisher, let us decide how we want to sample our content through search. And we understood that. And we understood why it was so important for publishers. So we changed our policy. And basically now we call it flexible sampling, which means that a defined publisher can define its own rule. 1 article free, 2 articles free, 0 article free, a flexible model according to the type of audiences, etc., etc. So we launched this early October, and if you are running a subscription model, feel free to reach out to me for you to put me in contact with your technical team that can get this right. The second thing we are looking at is how can we help a publisher understanding what type of readers might have the higher propensity to buy, and we do it with machine learning and rural data. This is very exploratory, but we believe, there is some possibility for us to help you deliver a higher conversion. And the last one is just friction. If you look at today on mobile, generally speaking, if you want to subscribe to any publisher, you have to put your name, to put your address, then to put your credit card, etc., etc. So it's a cumbersome process, and it's not efficient, and users abandon it in the middle. So we think we can help with that and help publishers having a one-tap subscription process. And the last thing I would like to talk about is data and machine learning. So this is a bit more, exploratory. I think what we see on the data side is many publishers don't have enough access and understanding of their audiences. I was having a discussion earlier today, and people were telling me, we don't know if they like tennis, if they like golf, etc., etc. So for us, it means how can we provide more, insight to your business people and your newsroom for them to better understand what type of audiences you have, how different it is from the overall audience on the internet, and what does it mean in terms of business decision you can take? What does it mean in terms of content recommendation? What does it mean in terms of customization of content you might want to have for different type of users? What does it mean, again, on the revenue side? We know that there is channel of users which have higher revenue. What does it mean in terms of how you bring them into your funnel so that you make more money out of them? So this is all about analytics, and we are working on it and developing some solution through Google Analytics and DoubleClick to provide more insight to publisher. Of course, we have the cloud team, which is more an infrastructure team within Google, which is more about, a typical issue in IT, when you have many sources of data, how do you bring them together? That's what the cloud team can do for you guys. And then I'm going to touch about machine learning, because machine learning, yes, it's a bit of a buzzword, but simply put, it's about finding patterns in old data and using them on new data. And we see some potential great application for news publisher, again, about personalization, about predicting subscriber churn, optimizing promotions, automated content moderation, etc., etc. So let me talk a bit about machine learning. It came directly from Sundar. I don't know if you heard of that. We will move from mobile first to AI first world. We see huge opportunities to dramatically improve how people work. That's something he said, 2 years ago, and he shifted the whole company exactly like he said. And the legend in Google is it came out of a presentation Sundar got 2 or 3 years ago from our product team in charge of Google Photo. Who is using Google Photo? Okay. I got like 5%. That's a fantastic tool, and Google Photo is using machine learning. That was the first consumer product from Google using at-scale machine learning. And what it does, for example, if you use it and you type sunset, you will have immediately all the photo you have in your file with a sunset. And there's many other applications. It can recognize people, etc., etc. And Sundar was so amazed by that. This is the moment he said, okay, we need to double down on machine learning. So we had a couple of projects with the news industry. I don't know if you've heard of the thing we did with Jitsu, and in a way to use machine learning to automatically flag comments that may be inflammatory and need a moderator's view. So we work with a couple of publishers. You have their name here: New York Times, The Guardian, The Economist, and Wikipedia. And they gave us an archive of commentaries that they had with, what they had to do with manual moderation. and then we put it through the machine, and the machine learns to recognize what is toxic comment versus what is not toxic comment. So it's not perfect, and you still need, an additional manual work on top of the machine, but it helps doing, 95% of the work, and then you just need to do the additional 5. In the same spirit, we work with Vice. Vice is publishing, I believe, in 75 countries and many different languages, and they use our translation API based on machine learning to translate all their articles in many different languages. And again, the result is not perfect. So what they do is then they still have a manual human curation on top of what the machine has been translating, but it delivers a lot of efficiency and cost saving in how they operate their international operation. So I think this is pretty much it. So how does it come together when we talk about storytelling, audience, revenue, data, and how do we apply that with our partner? Like I said, I am in the partnership team, so my job and the job of my team is to bring the best of Google to our partners. I would like to highlight a case here in the US with what we call the Local Media Consortium, which represents 70 local news publishers and broadcasters, 1,600 daily newspapers. We've started a relationship with them 4 years ago, started with monetization and ad serving business term. And then little by little, we enlarge this relationship to many different areas, to beautiful mobile experiences, getting all their sites publishing in AMP, by building insight on the most valuable source of traffic and benchmark them so that they understand how they are doing versus their peers. We've hosted webinars on YouTube and yield management. We've held multiple training sessions for local journalists with our News Lab team. And we work very closely with the senior executive of these representative companies at LMC, with them coming to Mountain View in our headquarters and sharing ideas of where the industry is going and where they see Google doing a good job or not doing a good job. So I think this is where I will wrap up, reminding you, of our priority. I hope they resonate with you guys. I hope you feel that the effort Google is putting on the table are aligned with what you would expect from us and can make a difference in how fast and well you're transitioning your business to digital. As I said, supporting quality journalism at a local, national, international level is a priority for Google, and we hope to do a great job at doing it. Thank you very much.